What's going on, guys? It's Matt Merenoff. I'm super excited this year. Well, not this year, but the season, which could consist of I don't know how many of these videos. You know, these days, Lee, because of you're not allowed to say anything. So the season could end right after this show. They could say, Merenoff, Facebook is done. You're done. So you might have to take over going forward from now. But anyway, I appreciate you coming on. If people don't know who Lee Perlman is, Lee Perlman is a consumer bankruptcy attorney since 1994. You don't need to adjust your screen. He's not 76 years old. He's in his early 50s, so don't panic. He's a young rooster. I'm proud to have him on. He is actually going to be my co-host, as I said, this season. So we're going to be covering a lot of ground tonight. So I hope you guys brought some popcorn. And before we get going, I just want to welcome everybody to the show, and we'll be right back after this message.
That is a fantastic video. I love it.
You like that?
That's fantastic. I love it. Yeah.
We're high tech. We are high tech over here now.
Very high production value.
Absolutely. So, Lee, so this season we're going to cover a lot of stuff. We're going to have We're going to have guests on that people are going to be like, wait, how did you get him on that show? Or how did you get her on that show? But tonight we're going to cover a couple of topics. And guys, we're not going to veer off. There's a script that I'm actually following. So people that are out there joking around say I have ADHD and all that stuff, that is correct. So I'm actually following a timeline tonight. So we're going to be covering foreclosure. We're going to be covering bankruptcy, evictions, real estate sales. I mean, it's just out of control right now. The mortgage forbearances and mortgage deferments. Lee, tell people maybe a fun fact about you that maybe they don't know. Nothing crazy, because, you know, this is a PG show.
So I had a little bit of a crazy start, Matt. I started my practice right after clerking for a judge and doing some per diem work. I studied for the bar when I worked down the shore as a waiter, kept my flashcards in my apron, and the chef would berate me every time I mixed up the orders in the kitchen. And that's how I got through, studied for the bar exam. After that, became a lawyer and went out on my own. For the first 6 months of my practice, when I started, I had about 2 or 3 clients. I worked half the day as a lawyer, would go in, work as a waiter. After about 6 months, decided that had enough clients and went completely on my own.
That's awesome. Never look back.
Never look back.
Since 1994.
Yes.
Isn't that funny that some of the people that are watching this right now were not even born yet?
It's crazy. I love what I do. I love that people can have a financial fresh start. I fundamentally believe everybody's entitled to a second act. Started my practice, was almost my own client. Today, we file anywhere between 400 to 500 cases a year. We have a team of about 10 people, 2 lawyers, both of whom have 20 years experience. And we work with businesses. We work with consumers. We deal with mortgages. We deal with debt collectors. We sue mortgage companies. And I enjoy it. I mean, I really do.
I like how you said we sue people, and I enjoy it. I got you.
I don't mind suing creditors. I really don't. I don't lose any sleep over it.
No, I got it. Listen, if they're doing the wrong thing, if they're doing the wrong thing by the people that are in trouble, and they're not, right, doing it for the right reasons, different story. 2 things let's cover. Number 1, in the news, Albany, New York.
Yeah, we were just talking about it. Crazy.
Right. If anybody hasn't seen this and they want me to send them the clip, hit me up on instant messenger on Facebook. I was shocked. Albany, New York. This was sent to me by a friend of mine. The landlord actually from what I understand, dragged the tenants out of the house by gunpoint and brought them out to the middle of nowhere, put pillowcases over the head, bound them up, with whatever ribbon or whatever he used, and left. He was just so fed up about what's going on and how you can't evict people, whatever. So that's actually scary. I don't think that's going to be the first and the last story that we're going to hear. But to me, I'm watching it and it was entertaining. I did laugh a little bit, but I was also like horrified for the tenants because obviously they didn't want to be in that situation. But also, too, what about the landlord? I mean,
Yeah, I think it's a terrible, horrific set of circumstances. No one would ever suggest somebody should do that. But I think the fact that you pointed out, it's an indication of the level of frustration,
yeah,
all landlords have. Every landlord is not an institutional hedge fund, multiple shopping center guy or gal. They're small landlords. Some of these landlords, they're at their breaking point. They haven't and are unable because of the eviction moratorium, which we'll talk a little bit more about, that's in place.
right.
They can't even get a court date. So
Right.
let alone even if they file an eviction complaint, it may not get docketed. They're not going to get any relief to have anybody evicted. These landlords, they have their own mortgages to pay. So they're dealing with their own mortgages. And if you are, say, you're an individual who's on Social Security and has a couple of rental properties, and you have a tenant who willfully decides he doesn't want to pay when he otherwise has the ability to, well, your frustration level's high. I'm not suggesting you're going to go out and use the pillowcase method, but I mean, you see what happens.
That's scary. Let's talk about something that we just talked about off camera. Let's talk about uh, a scenario with somebody who has a commercial building and how they were in trouble. Tell the story, Lee.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I talk to people all day long, clients, colleagues, and people are impacted. I have a colleague who is a sophisticated businessman, never had a financial concern his entire career, probably a little bit older than I am, has a shopping center with an anchor tenant, major health club. The rent $100,000 a month. That's the anchor store. The rent is $100,000 a month.
Wow.
Major athletic national club. And during the pandemic, the club was closed, and the club took the position nationally with all of their, the tenant slash health club will remain anonymous for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Rent was $100,000 a month, and they didn't pay their rent for 4 months.
That's just one location.
One location. So consequently, my colleague was unable to pay his mortgage, had to negotiate something very stressful to negotiate a deferral for 4 months of commercial mortgage payments. Now, after a lot of negotiations, he didn't just pick up the phone and they said, okay, nobody's coming in and swiping their card so they can do their crunches and their squats. But they said, okay, you can put it at the end, but there are going to be some conditions. You're going to be on probation for 12 months. And if you miss a payment during that period of time or are late, we're going to call in the loan. Because commercial loans are very different. They're not entitled to the same protections. The mortgage moratorium, that prevents the foreclosure moratorium, and the eviction moratorium does not apply in the commercial context. And I think that's why you brought it up, Matt. It's a great example because there's all these other situations out there that people aren't even aware of. So if you're a businessman and you primarily are a businesswoman, have a situation, where you can't do that. Yeah.
That's crazy. So let me back up. We're talking about one tenant. How many tenants are in that facility or in that mall or whatever it is?
Yeah, so that's interesting. In that facility, there are probably about 10 to 15 other stores. And after talking to him, I understood there's a provision that says that if you're not going to go ahead, if the anchor tenant at any point in time decides to pull out, the other tenants are allowed to voluntarily vacate their lease.
Really?
So, yeah. Yes. So he showed me the provision in the lease because, I'm always trying to educate myself and learn a little bit more. I don't
Didn't know
necessarily
that.
work a lot. Yeah. So it's fascinating. So say you're a smoothie store, and the smoothie store is getting serviced by the national gym membership, the national, anchor chain, the gym, and he doesn't have any business and they're out. He can leave, vacate his lease, walk away.
So the other people that were there that saw the gym wasn't open, those other tenants really could have said, "Hey, you know what? Sayonara, I'm out."
I
That's
think in
crazy.
certain circumstances they could have. Yeah. So that's a scary. So it's a good example of what's going on. And I think, Matt, you make a great point. I think you make a point that a lot of these commercial landlords, and even landlords who have commercial units, 1, 2, 3 units, they're really overlooked and no one's talking about them. I mean, everyone's focused on the consumers and the homeowners, and there's a lot of distress there, but there's also distress on the commercial side
So what
and the
would happen?
landlord side.
What would happen in a situation like that? That if somebody owned a commercial facility like that, you're saying it's a deferment. They deferred. He didn't make it for 4 months, and during that 4 months, he was trying to negotiate to put it on the back of the mortgage, or was he 4 months and said, "Hey, I'm ready to start paying again. Can you take those payments and put them on the back of the mortgage?"
No, I think what happened in this case, he told me that they reached a deal that did not happen overnight, where they took the 4 payments and they put it on the back end of the note with this provision that said he had to be current, he couldn't be late, and that
Right.
in addition to that, he was on probation for 12 months. Yeah.
What happens in the 12 months? What happens if he misses a payment?
If he missed the payment, he told me they could call in the loan.
Wow. Does he have any equity in the facility? Does
Yeah,
he have any
crazy.
equity? What's that?
That I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah.
That's scary in itself because people work. They one investment property, 2, 20, 100, 250. Hey, I'm going to go buy a strip mall. I'm going to go build a strip mall. Now, on the flip side, anybody that's cash out and they have the cash where they can actually take advantage of some of these, commercial properties that are out there, the bank's not going to want the property. They're going to want to liquidate. So that's a scary situation. So
That
I'm glad that we brought up the commercial side of it. So
absolutely.
that was a good point. So let's get into it.
It's definitely
Uh,
overlooked. Definitely overlooked.
Absolutely. So we're talking about obviously the residential side, but that was the commercial side. So that was a great sidebar for us to talk about. But let's talk about foreclosure. Let's talk about what is going on right now with foreclosure. We have the moratorium right now. We're looking to push this thing, from what I understand, to June.
Yep.
Right now, people were panicked because, oh my God, end of March. One thing I wanted to bring up that's not on this list, and I'm not diverting or anything like that, but one thing I want to bring up is, what about the people that were in forbearances that were promised that they were good until February? I got a phone call today from somebody that basically sent me paperwork, and in the paperwork it talks about how they can reinstatement, repayment, modification, short sale, deed in lieu of foreclosure. And then on the bottom of it, they've got this little nonsense line that basically reads, "You don't qualify for anything, you're shit out of luck." So what about in a situation like that where a bank says, "Hey, you've got till February." They've said this thing over recorded lines. But then they're saying, "Hey, you know what? You didn't. This was December. You're supposed to pay in December, January, February." So unwillingly, not knowing, the homeowner said, "Okay, well, I got a couple extra months. I'm going to pay partial payment, which you can do during the forbearance." And now they're basically saying, "Notice of foreclosure." That's ridiculous. How can they legally do that?
Yeah. I don't know whether they have the ability to do that. I have to look at his forbearance agreement. I mean, if it's an FHA back loan,
Not FHA.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
If it's
FHA
not FHA, they might be able to do that. Yeah.
All right, well, FHA, we'll talk about that in a little bit later. So let's talk about the foreclosures. Lee, what is going to happen between last March, right, and we're in March? So I mean, for all practical purposes, we're going on almost a year now in a different lifestyle, which is weird because they talk about the freshman 15. You go away to college, you gain 15 pounds, right? So during the pandemic, I gained probably about 25 pounds. Just want to put it out there. Don't adjust your cameras at home. I am a little bit wider. Just want to make that clear. What are we going to do in a situation like that? What do we do in a situation like that?
I mean, the problem, just to take a couple steps back, if that's all right. I mean, you got a situation now where we have a foreclosure moratorium, which was going to expire right in March. There's legislation now that's likely to pass that's going to extend it probably to June. And at that point, when the foreclosure moratorium expires, you're going to have homeowners who are going to be behind a year and a half, almost pushing 2 years of payments. Now, remember, when we talk about these forbearances, you're in a forbearance. The mortgage company, if you have an escrowed loan, those taxes that the homeowner's still responsible for those taxes during that forbearance period. So, we want to make a distinction in the forbearance context. Remember, with the foreclosure moratorium, that applies to FHA. We talked about FHA, VA, USDA mortgages representing about 3/4 of the mortgage. The other, quarter of the mortgages, all bets are off. I mean, they really can do what they want. And in fact, some foreclosures have resumed with non-FHA mortgages. Everybody should know that. I'll say it again. If you don't have an FHA mortgage, and you can easily figure out whether you have an FHA mortgage, you can go online, you can call your servicer. But if you have a non-FHA mortgage, I've seen circumstances in the last 60 days where those foreclosures have resumed, and they don't have to.
But isn't that really for properties that are vacant, that are not owner occupied, or they're not abandoned properties?
Mostly, but I still think that there is some authority if they wanted to. Now, look, we're not talking about a lot of foreclosures, Matt. I've seen the data from New Jersey. We look at Bergen, Monmouth, the counties where you are, Gloucester, Middlesex, the counties down where I am. You're talking anywhere between 6 and 12 foreclosures for the whole docket. So it's not a lot, but the point is, if you're one of those 6 or 12 and they're continuing, it's no less scary for you. So returning to a minute on the forbearance, I want to point out, the forbearance, so everybody understands from a definitional point of view, it's the skipping of the mortgage payments, or like you said, Matt, a reduced payment for a set period of time. Remember, if your loan is FHA, VA, USDA, the lender can't require you to pay back those skip payments all at once when the forbearance period ends. And there shouldn't be additional fees or interest. Now, you asked me while we were off camera in the beginning, what happens if there is? I think, you have two choices at that point. You could potentially file a complaint with the CFPB, or if you end up in foreclosure, God forbid, I think you want to talk to an attorney, because that could be an affirmative defense to your foreclosure if they're monkeying around. Or like you say, these calls are taped, and if in a taped call, the mortgage company is giving information that's wrong or inaccurate, or to be incorrect, I think that's something that you want to bring up to the lender.
I just hit Lee.
Remember, at the end of the forbearance, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing that scares me is that, let's say this person purchased a property last March, and they were gainfully employed. You're never going to lose your job. You're awesome. We love you. Great. 3 months later, they lose their job. Now they're, let's say, 10 months behind on let's say they're 7 months behind on their mortgage. Now they're 7 months behind on their mortgage. Are you going to tell me that they're going to take that 7 months and they're going to take that and then they're going to put it over the course of a year? Because remember, I don't see, how do you put that in the back of a mortgage of somebody who just got, let's say, an FHA, VA, or USA, whatever loan, and then you can't push the envelope with that. So what happens? Does the payment just go up? And if the payment goes up, how does the person qualify to keep their house?
You're asking really great questions that obviously we don't have all the answers to, but I do know that if it is an FHA, VA mortgage and you're in a forbearance, that forbearance can't provide that when the forbearance period's up, if it's 6 months, that it has to be paid in a lump sum. Okay, it has to be at the end of the note. But just because it's at the end of the note doesn't mean it's any easier. You're kicking the can down the road, and that's a balloon payment that's going to come up at the end of the note. Now, we have to make a distinction. Again, we talked about VA, FHA type mortgages. If you're a non-FHA mortgage, right, then the mortgage company, all bets are off. They can do whatever they want. That forbearance can provide that at the end of that term, if you didn't have a lawyer look at it or you don't understand what a forbearance is, you're 6 months done and I want all 6 payments. They can do that if it's a non-FHA mortgage. They're permitted to do that. Very important.
You also do know that a lot of this stuff is done verbally over the telephone. So you could call up and say, I can't make my payment. Okay, cool, no problem. What is your hardship? Oh, I'm not working right now.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is a well thought out plan for people to try to get over on the banking industry or the government. You weren't working? Okay. Well, we need 12 months bank statements and we need pay stubs or whatever. I mean, the rules can change. And then they're going to go back and they're going to identify people that basically committed fraud. So I hope to God this does not turn out like 2007 and 2008. But, and I'm a little bit of a betting man, if I had to, I would say it's going to take a little bit of a different turn. I don't know if it's going to be considered like a monsoon, but we're going to have some serious issues. And I think people that try to get over on the banking industry and the government and taking advantage of some unemployment that's out there and you weren't gainfully employed, I think it's a dangerous game. People are seriously stealing money, in my opinion.
I think that people too, when the people enter into a forbearance, I don't think they've educated themselves or really understand some of the things they should be looking at. For instance, you're in a forbearance, you should be looking at your mortgage statement. Pay attention to your mortgage statement, monitor what it looks like, see if there are errors in there. Remember, we're in a period now too where credit reports are free and there's no penalty for ordering them multiple times. So you can keep an eye out for your credit report, take a look at it, see how the servicer is reporting your account as defined by the CARES Act, which is the foreclosure moratorium. And if you stop making payments without a forbearance agreement, see how the servicer's reporting that, because those can give rise to Fair Credit Reporting Act violations.
Well, hold on a second.
So just something to think about. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you on that one. Had an old client. Yeah. The son literally had a brain fart and said to his parents, "Stop paying your mortgage." And the parents, "Okay, I won't pay the mortgage." Well, they stopped paying the mortgage, but they never contacted the bank. Now, if they contacted the bank and say, "Hey, we're having trouble paying our mortgage, can we do a forbearance?" The answer would have been yes. And I know this because I called the bank because, in all honesty, I wanted to know for myself what happens. They are reporting it to the credit bureau. They did not call the bank and ask for any help. Well, because they didn't do that, you're going to get dinged on your credit report. I'm sorry. But now they're in such a situation now where they're, I think, 8 months down on their mortgage. They're a point of no return. The actual investor, not the servicer, the investor of a loan, it's a private investor, is like, we're done. We are not helping you anymore. So now they have no other They can only do
Yeah.
liquidation option.
You raise a very, very, very significant, I think, underreported issue, an issue that I think is going to come up a lot that no one's talking about. And that's why Matt Merenoff always is great, because he brings up stuff that people don't necessarily think about.
Can I call my
and I want to
wife?
just take a step back.
Can I call my wife in? Can you tell her that?
If you stop making mortgage payments and you don't have a forbearance agreement, the servicer is going to report the information to the credit companies, and they're going to be able to do that without repercussion. That's why making sure you have a forbearance agreement and you see what it is. So many times, like you say, it's done, on the phone, telephonic, but you want to see what the terms of that are, because if you don't have a forbearance agreement, you stop making payments, watch out. Your credit's going to tank. It's going to tank. It's going to be impacted.
Lee, let's talk about
So the
real
other thing you want to pay attention to. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate also, the taxes and insurance. Those obligations don't go away. I mean, the average real estate taxes, I think I recently read in our Garden Wonderful State, run between 15 and 20 grand annually. So, you get a forbearance, you have an obligation to make tax escrow payments. The 6 months that represents half a year of taxes. If you haven't figured out a way to address that, that's going to come back and really kick you in the butt. So, yeah, I just want to make a point on that.
No, absolutely. Let's talk about real estate sales. They're so out of control. And I'm, because I'm plugged in nationally, and I talk with real estate agents in other states, and I've talked with, BPO agents or appraisers, and I have conversations with people. I am blown away that in the banking industry, that nobody learned from 2007 and 2008, where they are asking appraisers, quote unquote, can you pump up the value of the appraisal? Are you kidding me? So whereas a property might have been worth $500,000, they're trying to pump this thing up $100,000 more than the houses are really worth. I would say right there and then, the people that are trying to do stuff like, they should be spanked. That is high disregard for no one, and putting people back in situations that they were way back when, because when the values drop, and they will, and these people are over leveraged on the property, and they can't make their payments because they're out of a job or they're between jobs, and they're on their second, God willing not, but their second modification, because they've already tried to do something during this time with the modification. We're going to find people, there's going to be another healthy load of people that are going to be in trouble. Do you agree or disagree with that?
See, I agree with that. I don't see those transactions on the front end as much as you do, because by the time there's problems, people come to me after the deal, they're stuck with the deal. But
Right.
From the real estate professionals that I deal with, the realtors that I talk to, and the people in our network, our business network, things are going gangbusters. And my concern is the way that these deals are being done is identical to the way that things were being done in many ways to 2008 that we both lived through. There, people, I mean, you mentioned it the other day. People are putting minimal amounts down. Appraisals are being inflated, and we know why all this is happening. No one's looking at history, but there's money to be made, and no one is paying attention to the consequences. People are getting involved in deals with equity cushions that are so small that I really do think that all we need is a slight adjustment with respect to values, which it's inevitable. I'm not an economist. I'm just a little bankruptcy lawyer. It's going to be a problem.
All right, Lee, let's talk about bankruptcy. Obviously, bankruptcy attorney has been choked up the last, year or so. I know that you're an innovator in your space. I know that you're now doing real estate closings. You're getting ready. You're jumping into that realm, and obviously, I'm excited about that, because any attorney, hopefully, that's watching this will understand that if you're switching gears a little bit, you've been moving around a little bit, you have clients that you've been working with, and production overall is probably low and down. What was the big firm that went out of business in Jersey?
Yeah, some of the large, one large firm that represents servicers and mortgage companies actually closed. I mean, not surprising, very unfortunate. A lot of colleagues and friends at some of these firms, but if there haven't been foreclosure,
we don't have to say the firm name, but how many attorneys were let go?
I think anywhere between 10 to 15 lawyers worked in that firm. So,
and it was a big firm, and they were open for how many years?
They were around for a long time. I mean, they had a presence both in Philadelphia and in New Jersey. And the problem really practically for a firm like that is, processing foreclosures requires an infrastructure. There are paralegals on the file. People have to look at title. People have to, make sure things are getting filed with the county. And then there needs to be a lawyer to be able to, sign the certifications and the affidavits. If things are on literal pause since last March, like we talked about, everything slowed down. How are the paychecks supposed to clear? You can't continue to work off the firm credit line. So those guys are really impacted too. I've heard off the record that there are thousands of foreclosures, thousands that are teed up and ready to go once the foreclosure moratorium is lifted. Whether and how sheriff sales are going to be conducted, to the extent that COVID is hopefully starting to be in our rearview mirror, I don't know. But sheriff sales are, everyone, you may or may not know, sheriff sales conducted, in a room, they're close quarters. So I don't know yet, how those are going to be conducted. I don't think everybody knows. But once foreclosures start to resume, there's going to be a backlog, that's going to be far worse than 2008. Getting a foreclosure return date, getting your foreclosure process, getting a default judgment, I think all of that is going to really slow down. I mean, it always took a long time in New Jersey because New Jersey is a judicial foreclosure state, meaning you have to go through the courts, unlike Georgia, as an example where, they file something and then they can sell your house at the courthouse step, different processes. But so the courts are going to be really overloaded. I mean, they have to be. There was never a pause like this in 2008 for so long.
Lee, hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Hi there. I'm Lee Perlman. I'm a consumer bankruptcy attorney. I've been helping people get a financial fresh start since 1994. You can reach me at newjerseybankruptcy.com or 856-751-4224.
I like that commercial, by the way. Guys, if you want to reach out to my co-host,
I like that too.
He's in New Jersey. He's licensed for bankruptcy in the state of New Jersey. Obviously, if you want to reach out to him for real estate closings, you can reach out to him for real estate closings as well. His number is 856-751-4224. And obviously, you have his website. You can go take a look at his website as well. Lee, we covered a lot of ground tonight in a short period of time. The premise of the shorter show and more structure is to have as many people watch it. And if they have extra questions, obviously, they can reach out. They can reach out to you. They can reach out to me. So with that, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. I think this is a great kickoff. Do you have any questions or do you have any concerns or anything you want to add before we close it out?
I just want people to understand that, bankruptcy is always something to consider. It's an option. If the modification route can't work, if the forbearance, for whatever reason, is not feasible, you always want to look at a bankruptcy option. You can also look at bankruptcy in conjunction with a loan modification. And we can use bankruptcy with a short sale as well to help save a property. Matt and I have done that on a number of occasions and have done it well. And they know the short sale space like nobody else. So,
I appreciate
you know, get your options, get educated. That's always what Matt preaches. He and I think alike on that.
that. Absolutely. We're brothers from other mothers. Right there, I said brothers from other mothers. That's it. That's why I'll never have another show again, because I said that. Everything's crazy. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you, Matt.
Not a know until you get a string.